Topic 1.11, subtracting unlike fractions and mixed numbers. So today we're going to subtract unlike fractions, subtract mixed numbers, and we're going to learn about borrowing today in this lesson. So first up, we're going to look at subtracting unlike fractions. And just like adding unlike fractions, we need to have a common denominator. Sometimes we call this the least common multiple or the least common denominator. So for the subtraction, we're going to follow some steps. We're going to find that lowest common denominator. We're going to change our fractions to have that matching denominator, and then we're going to subtract our numerators. So for the first example, we have 5/6 minus 3/8. Our lowest common denominator here is going to be 24. And so we're going to change each of our fractions to make the denominators equivalent to 24. So we're going to be multiplying the first one by 4. And what we do on the bottom, we're going to do on the top. And then we're going to be multiplying the 8 times 3. And I'll write the new fractions below. So we're going to be getting 20 over 24 minus 9 over 24. Now we're ready to go ahead, keep our denominator, and subtract 20 minus 9 is 11. We always want to check if our answer is in lowest terms, which it is. So 11/24 is our answer. Example number 2, we're finding the lowest common denominator of 15 and 5. That's going to be 15, so we only have to change the one fraction. So we're going to multiply this fraction by 3, both denominator and numerator. I'm going to rewrite below 12/15 minus 9/15. Keep our denominator. Subtract our numerators, 3/15. Here we have a fraction that's not in lowest terms, so if we can divide, we must. Dividing by the same factor. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 15 divided by 3 is 5. So 1/5 is the final answer for number 2. We're going to do a couple more together here. Same method. Finding our lowest common denominator, changing our fractions, and using subtraction, leaving our final answer in lowest terms. So lowest common denominator of 6 and 9. 6 times 6 is 36, and 9 times 4 is 36. So 36 is our lowest common denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and set it up. I always write these down so that I don't make mistakes, because I find if I don't write things down, I'm going to be multiplying by the wrong numbers. So that's going to give me 30 over 36 minus 16 over 36. 30 minus 16 is 14 over 36. And both of these numbers are even, so I'm going to be dividing them. Looks like I think I can only divide by 2 here. I'm going to go ahead and do that. 14 divided by 2 is 7, and 36 divided by 2 is 18. So final answer here is 7/18. For my next one, I have 4 and 12. My lowest common denominator is going to be 12 here, so I only have to change my first fraction, multiplying by 3. So that's going to give me 9/12 minus 5/12 is equal to 4/12. Again, not in lowest terms. I'm going to divide now. Divide by 4, divide by 4. I'm going to get myself down to 1/3. Okay, so just like adding fractions, subtraction all involves that lowest common denominator. So now we're going to get into a situation where we may need to do some borrowing. So borrowing makes sense when we look at shapes. So if we have 2 pizzas and we subtract 2/3, we're going to see on this page the visual of this. So 2 pizzas, each of them are divided into 3 pieces, and then we take away the 2/3. So you're eating these 2 pieces. So how much do you have left? You have 1 whole pizza and 1/3 left. So the visuals can help us, and then we learn how to manipulate our numbers to get there. So we have a number of steps that we need to follow when we're subtracting fractions and whole numbers. So for the first example, we've got 3 minus 2/3. So we're going to divide these pieces, these kind of like pizzas again. So you have 3 whole ones, and we're going to take away. So this time I'm going to shade away what I'm eating. We're taking away. I'm going to take away that 2/3. So we can see that we have 2 whole pizzas left and 1/3. So that's going to be our answer. But how can we do this in a way that's just with numbers? Because sometimes we're going to be drawing way too many figures. So the way we solve is by breaking down this 3 into a whole number and fraction. So if 3 whole is divided into thirds, what we have then is we have 2 whole, and we have the 3rd pizza has 3 pieces out of 3. Because we know that 3 over 3 is equal to 1. So 2 whole and another 1 is equal to 3. So this is called the borrowing step. So I'm going to borrow. Really, I'm changing 3 to 2 3/3. And now I can subtract the fraction away. My fractions are like. Notice that I'm using that denominator. How did I decide it was 3/3? Because I have a denominator of 3 here. So I'm going to be now subtracting. This little guy is like having a 0 in front, right? So 2 minus 0 is 2, and 3 minus 2 is 1. So the borrowing step is really important, and we're going to be borrowing from whole numbers, changing them to mixed numbers, but not changing their value, just writing them in a different way. So let's do another one. This one is 4 minus 1 3/8. Okay. So if we're going to divide these into 8 pieces, all of these, if we took away a whole one and we took away 3 more pieces, what would we be left with? We'd be left with 2 whole ones and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'd be left with 2 whole ones and 5 eighths. So visually we can see what we're left with. Now we need to manipulate our numbers. We divided these pieces into eighths. So what we're going to do is we're going to borrow from the 4 in order to set up a good fraction. So we're going to take 1 away from the 4, and we're going to create the 1 by making 8 over 8, because 3 and 8/8 is the same thing as 4. That's just 3 plus 1. Now, by doing that, what it gives us is the ability to subtract using numbers instead of visuals. So now I can subtract whole number from whole number. 3 minus 1 is 2. And I can subtract my numerators. 8 minus 3 is 5. So the borrowing step is a little different than borrowing with whole numbers. We're really borrowing in order to create a mixed number from a whole number. So 4 is equivalent to 3 8/8. And remember, the denominator of the one fraction is what dictates to you how to make your other fraction. You want to make life easy and make them like fractions. So let's do another one. We're going to subtract fractions and whole numbers. 6 1/3 minus 4. So we're going to divide these into 3. Whoops, that was bad. They're all kind of backwards now. So we've got 6 1/3. So this one is what we've got. 6 1/3. And we're going to take away 4. So we're going to take this one away, this one away, this one away, this one away. What are we left with? We're left with 2 1/3. Well, hang on a second. Do I need to borrow from anywhere to get that? I don't. So watch this one. When I have my mixed number first minus a whole number, I simply have to subtract my whole numbers. 6 minus 4 is 2, and the 1/3 comes along. So those ones, when a fraction is at this front and we're subtracting a whole number, we don't have to go through the borrowing step. Now, if we did, nothing would go wrong. It would just be a little bit extra work. So let's take a look at the 4 questions, 1.11b. So the first one, we're going to borrow from the whole number. We've got a whole number minus a fraction. The denominator is 6. We're going to have 2 6/6 minus 5/6 is equal to 2 minus nothing is 2. 6 minus 5 is 1. 2 1/6. For number 2, we have 4 minus a half. So we're going to borrow from the 4. We're going to make it 3 2/2. That is equal to 4. Minus a half is equal to 3 1/2, right? And that makes sense. We totally know that 4 minus a half is 3 1/2. Number 3, we need to borrow. We have a whole number minus a mixed number. The denominator is 8, so we're going to drop down from 6 to 5. 5 8/8 minus 3 1/8. We go ahead and subtract our whole numbers. 5 minus 3 is 2. 8 minus 1 is 7 over 8. And for number 4, we have a mixed number minus a whole number. We don't need to borrow at all here because we have the fraction coming first. So all we have to do here, be careful, watch these ones, is subtract. 3 minus 2 is 1, and that 3/4 is tacked on. So our answer there is 1 3/4.